Apple A18 Pro is coming out soon. We're, in August right now. We're about a month away from September and the release of new iPhones, iPhone 16 models. Last year, they came out with the A17 Pro. This year, they're expected to come out with the A18 Pro. Now, this will be continuing on improvements that TSMC has made to their 3nm process. Some people are saying that all of the iPhone 16s will get an A18. If I had to bet on it, I would say that the base 16s get the A17 Pro from last year. And I'd say only the new phones, only the, 16 Pro, 16 Pro Max get the brand new A18 Pro chip. But I mean, like, what can you expect from these new chips? The Pro versions will probably have an extra GPU core. Let's say if there was an A18 basic and then an A18 Pro, I would say the Pro would probably have 6 GPU cores, just like last generation. Basic one would probably have 5 GPU cores. Probably from year over year, you'll get like a 10 to 20% increase in CPU and GPU performance from last year's A17 Pros. The A17 Pros also featured 8 gigabytes of RAM. So either way, I think that all iPhone 16 models will have 8 gigabytes of RAM, whether that's the base models given the A17 Pro chip, or if the base models get like an A18 basic chip. I think all of them will have 8 gigabytes of RAM, and that's specifically because people are saying Apple Intelligence needs at least 8 gigabytes to operate on a device. So when you look at all the M series laptops and desktops and, iPads that will be running Apple Intelligence, they all have 8 gigabytes of RAM. So I think that the base 16 models will be able to run Apple Intelligence. And the reason they seem to be moving on so fast, so this is a rumor that could support them going with an A18 basic instead of an A17 Pro for the base model iPhones. This new 3nm process is the second generation of the 3nm process. So what they came out with last year in the A17 Pro and the Apple M3 chips were based off of the first generation process for 3nm by TSMC, the company that manufactures all these chips. They referred to it as a transition design. So there's a lot of inefficiencies that came about when creating this process, and they've already come out with a second generation. They've already upgraded their process in making them. So that's why, with something like the iPad Pro that just got the M4 chip, it seems like the reason they didn't want to put the M3 chip is they've already, obviously they have an M4 chip to put in it. The M3 is already obsolete, right? It seems like they didn't want to put an obsolete chip that they already made so many improvements on in their brand new flagship iPad. So they said, okay, we have the M4 ready with our new second generation 3nm process. This A18 Pro is going to get the new second generation 3nm process. And I could see them, for that reason, put in an A18 basic chip in the iPhone 16 models, because from their standpoint, right, the A17 Pro is already obsolete. They've already made maybe leaps and bounds ahead of it. The only other thing I see really coming to the A18 Pro with, how big of an emphasis Apple seems to be putting on Apple Intelligence, I could see it having an expanded neural processing unit compared to last generations also. So I don't really see changes with RAM, GPU, CPU. I think the biggest change is going to come from the NPU that they put on this A18 Pro chip to help accelerate all of the AI processes that they put on their phones moving forward. But is the idea of focusing on an NPU interesting to me? No, I'm not interested in all these AI advancements that all these companies are talking about bringing to their phones. I'm not interested. If they are going to keep on leaning more and more into AI and Apple Intelligence and, all this stuff, then it's going to limit what they emphasize on devices too, right? And I'm sure that not just Apple, like I'm sure companies like Qualcomm, like MediaTek, and I guess even looking beyond just mobile devices, like if we're talking about laptops, right? Like AMD, Intel are also going to start emphasizing more of the NPUs on their chips. So it's not going to be so much about, okay, how many performance cores, how many efficiency cores. It's going to be how many neural processing units do you have on this chip for your phone, for your laptop, for your desktop, because it seems like all companies are directing their marketing and directing their R&D towards AI stuff. If you had to, bet, do you think they would come out with an A18 basic and an A18 Pro? Or do you think they're going to put last year's chip in it in the new iPhones? How many people actually know and care? Probably not that many, but you do bring up a point. It doesn't make sense to have a pro chip in a non-pro phone, but it also doesn't make sense that we're on the A18 and the iPhone 16, and then like when we were talking about the iPhone 15s, the 15 Pro had a 17 chip and the 15 had a 16 chip. It's like there's a lot of things Apple does that doesn't make sense. So you bring up a good point. It doesn't make sense to have a pro chip in a non-pro phone, but I'm going to stick to my guns and say Apple doesn't care about making sense. They just care about doing the Apple thing. And the Apple thing is A17 Pro in the iPhone 16, A18 Pro in the iPhone 16 Pro and Pro Max. Perfectly nonsensical, just the way Apple likes it.
If you've made it this far and you enjoy the video, please hit subscribe, hit the like button, and I'll see you in the next one.